Okay. شكرا جزيلا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأكمل التسليم على سيدنا ونبينا وإمامنا محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه الغر الميامين. My respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for bearing with me after having a lunch and giving me some of your attention. I hope that what I present today adds something to your vast knowledge and experience and draws your attention to a different way of approaching healthcare as such. So I'd like to start by saying that I am a very spontaneous human being, so I follow my intuition. Just last week, my colleague was in Dubai and mentioned to me about Kammp. Because of my ignorance, I wasn't aware of the efforts that are being put together by Muslims here. I said I would be honored to come, happy to fly, happy to participate, to contribute, to support in any way I can. It helps a lot when you see other Muslims working together towards a common good goal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى. And that is definitely a form of collaboration that is extremely needed nowadays. This is how I ended up coming here. As far as this journey, I'm now beyond my 50s, and you know, I was giving a presentation to fresh medical graduates from one university, talking about the topic of preventative oncology, using a personalized approach. And I noticed that it can't stop at that end. We have to do something about it. I mean, there's a lot of talks I've heard, benefited a lot from the talk on diabetes and the other talk on, mashallah, on the honey and the benefits of honey. But I noticed that, you know, how many times have you gone to your internist or your endocrinologist and the discussion was around you have to take to exercise, you have to walk, you have to eat healthy. How do we make this happen actually, other than the advice? So people are living in cities, it's unhealthy. The way we live right now is actually against the way we are made up genetically, and it's counterproductive. And regardless of the enormous efforts, the hundreds of billions of dollars that are being spent globally, if not trillions now, in the past 20 years, more than $500 billion have been spent in the area of cancer. It is on a steep rise. So something wrong is happening, and we, as pioneers of medicine, physicians, Muslim physicians, we need to take a different approach to this. Not just by not doing harm. So prevention is at the heart of our practice. There's a lot of consultants and specialists in the room. They deal with the aftermath of the problem, usually, whether it's a kidney failure or it's a side effect from a drug. Prevention is too late now. So think about preventative medicine has an important role in prevention of disability and death. When I mention this to people, it always pops up into their mind, the very expensive oncology medication and tumor profiling. That's what they think about. But it's not like that, and that's what we're pioneering, and inshallah the Muslims will be at the forefront of making this definition. What we're doing, we've had delegates visit us from Sweden, Canada, the US, because they're seeing results, and I hope to present 1 or 2 case studies at the end. Going through a very simple definition for the layman, for the non-specialist, a cancer cell refuses to die and spreads havoc elsewhere and doesn't do its job. That's what it is. Just think of it like this, and I'll take you to a point where this relates to the topic. The burden of cancer is unbelievable. I'm just going to ask you to kindly tell me, the ones who have had themselves, may Allah protect you all, cancer, or first-degree relative cancer, raise your hand in the room. Okay? Everyone. And this is a room full of doctors. This is what you need to think about. Planning for this. Is this going to happen? 1 in 2 men, this is the 2016, it's not that much, will get this. Half of the men here. 1 in 3 women. My father passed of that. Everybody here is affected. So the burden is quite big. I'm skipping through a lot of slides. These are the causes of mortality. As you could see, lung is quite big. That's why there's a lot of focus on particularly medications where you are able to profile lung tumors, and you're able to give inhibitors or targeted therapies for specific cancers. Lung is number 1, prostate 2. In terms of prevalence, prostate is more. This is for men only, right? So prostate is higher, but mortality is from lung, number 1. This is number 1. And you can see also where it lies here. So when you see, we're in East Africa here, and we could see a little bit more of the green. That doesn't mean that the number 1 cause is not lung. It just means that a lot of lung cancer is undiagnosed, and that's why people pass. It does not mean that it's the other way around, because you need technologies that are not available in a lot of villages and a lot of towns. As far as females, as expected, breast leads the way, cervix number 2, lung number 3. Lung quite important, right? So, if everybody in the room is touched with this problem, and everybody knows how dangerous this is, and it's rising, 500 billion have been spent, and it's rising. Something is being done or not done correctly, right? So what's the current state of affairs in your practice, in your clinic? What do? This is the current state of affairs. We're going to pick some of these cancers that are important. So look at breast, for example. Here, mammography, 42% are uninsured. The cost is a big barrier in a lot of countries to do mammography. The travel, if you go to villages now, it becomes very, very difficult, extremely difficult. Rural areas, but also it can drop to as low as 65% in terms of detection, okay? And I'll come to this because that's the good side of things. What about self-examination? Well, the ratios become even higher. Positives are 10 to 25%. Only 46% of breast cancers can be detected by breast self-examination. And it's highly variable. You cannot depend on that. Let's pick prostate, PSA. This is so old. This is so old now. Non-specific and non-sensitive and false positives of, according to the Journal of American Medical Association, 7.3%. Yani almost 1 in 10 people. Also overdiagnosis and overtreatment. Lots of surgeries that may not be needed because of the lack of proper approach for treatment. I'll ultrasound, not the way for prostate cancer. Just simply, I don't have time because of the limitations, so I have to go through this very quickly. Colorectal, the picture is even worse. As you can see, we see Ethiopia's got very high, which means colorectal is quite high also in this part of the world, and it's one of those devastating forms. So we're going to go through, what do we have as doctors? Fecal occult blood? Come on. This is like prehistoric medicine. Global challenges, there isn't a consensus even on any program today. There are lots of guidelines, but they're different. Age and age limit of screening, who should we screen, how much should we spend, how frequent, agreement on the modalities of screening. Every country has its own national program. How many countries have mandatory screening program? I know, for example, Holland has got a fecal occult blood program, but I'm not sure what it is here. But it's quite important, In South Africa, for example, they've got some screening programs for the insured people, but it's very expensive and very limited, and it's not even covered. Well, let's get to prevention, and then we'll talk about this. So I'm going to skip a slide and take you right through to this study, which I think is very important, because this is 346,000 people who have been studied here, right? So 142,000 of those are attributed, cancer patients attributed to preventable. Preventable, you can prevent. This is how it looks, right? So you've got everything from smoking to alcohol to diet. Muslims, we are the Muslims. This is very pertinent to what we preach and what we know, right? Diet, just having breakfast this morning at the hotel. I don't know how many of you are staying here, but I'm looking at the African diet. This is not made for Africa, what's on the buffet. I'm sorry, this is not made for Africa. And I'm looking at the beach, and there's these slim, thin, running kids. That's how they should be living and eating. But what's happening in the buffet, which is associated more of a rising middle class, with heaps of carbohydrates, lots of sugary drinks. One of those small sugary drinks are like the drink of these pineapples. The American Heart Association says, they say 8, let's make it 12 grams of sugar a day, right? This thing has got 40. And I saw someone carrying 2 and back. 2. Yes, and piling up stuff. This is what's happening. You can check it. I didn't have lunch, so I can speak freely. So we go next to that. And this is what you look at. I mean, I asked my team to put it in a simple way, right? And then I said, let's look at prevention, and all the green ones are preventable. The issue is, how do we prevent? We're not reinventing the wheel here. There must have been hundreds of programs for telling people stop smoking and exercise, and you tell your clients, you tell yourself even, but you wake up in the morning like you've been run by a bus, you can't even walk and barely go to the clinic and come back. I coined a few terms in my 30 years journey in medicine. One of them is a term called sick in the city, right? Sick in the city. So I have patents on that name. Lots of people sick in the city. Very, very, very sick in the city. It's not made for us, really. Skipping quickly to genetics. Just remember that statement. If you walk out, genetics load the gun, they don't pull the trigger. Remember this very, very, very well. They load the gun, I'm aware, and I ask for 10 minutes more. I ask for 10 minutes more in the morning. So genetics load the gun and they don't pull the trigger. Trust me, these are valuable information, please. Very important. Well, what's your blueprint? Another fun fact for you to remember: one DNA molecule goes to the sun and comes back 600 times. You've got 80 trillion, so imagine this is how much your DNA could stretch. Your DNA in your body could go to the sun and back 600 times. So I want to take you to this is a bit technical now, because we, in your practice and in your busy life, you don't get to really connect with the researchers. We don't connect with them. If you're going to see 40 patients a day, you're not going to be able to understand these terminologies. So walk out with genetics, load the gun, don't pull the trigger. Remember these 3 that you see there. A cell starts, is this pointer working? Let me see. Yeah, so when the cell starts to divide, the next step is to halt that division. Basically, who was speaking about death this morning? When the cell is born, the first order given to a cell is when to die. That's the first thing. So, death here. Then, another modulation happens now since the cell has got an order to die, it needs another order to grow. So that takes place with these kind of proteins. And then, as it grows and divides, lots of arrows. Think about photocopying papers with an old photocopier where you ran out of ink. So after you photocopy too many papers, the 1 and the L look the same. The I and the L are the same, that you don't know if it's an I or L. Well, there's they say now it's about 130 proteins and genes involved in correcting each and every cell. That's a different topic we could talk about in a different point, but that is called DNA. I'm sure, who has heard of the BRCA1 and 2 genes? Okay, everybody in this room. Okay, so BRCA falls here. The BRCA1 and 2, along with 130 others. Those are mechanics, repair shops that come and fix stuff. Proto-oncogenes, no, they push, they press like the famous RAS, the WINK, all of these proteins, they put their pedal on the gas to push forward. Tumor suppressors, the famous TP53, it's the termination gene that says you're going to die now, it's finished. So you should die, otherwise you become cancerous, And that's how the series of mutations could lead to cancer with defects in any of those. So let's rethink the cancer journey. I've canceled about 40 slides from the presentation, but I happen to come back voluntarily to talk about this because we need to do something. This is what we have right now. What do we have? Detection, diagnosis, treatment. So every single modality you've seen, the good news, 80%, 70%, bad news, they're not prevention. When you do your mammogram, that's not a preventative method. That's a diagnostic method. This is called early diagnosis. Early diagnosis is not prevention. So this is the current cancer journey at its best. Early diagnosis, early detection, diagnosis, and go through the treatment world. Now, if you add to this slide is not showing, the prevention, the current approach that we have for cancer is detect and diagnose, let's treat. This is the balanced new approach. Instead of detect and diagnose, let's check a code. Again, I'm aware of the cost. I come from this region. I studied medicine at Cairo Medical School, so I know exactly how much people can afford. Clinical screening, counseling, that is screen. Next, diet, nutrition, clinical intervention, and lifestyle changes. Sick in the city, we have made it. Our clinic/lab/wellness center is addressing this now, and you see a few case studies as we go forward for patients. So look at that now in the screen. If you want to look deeper, nutrigenomics is important, personal traits, as well as hereditary cancer, polygenic risk score, here on this coast, very important. Polygenic risk score means your individualized ethnicity is different. She is different from she, and every one of them has a different risk according to their ethnicity. But when you have thousands of genes involved, it becomes an algorithmic process. We've devised this. I have a fantastic team of researchers working with me, bioinformaticians, as well as molecular biologists and scientists. Now, look at the others in terms on the ACT. You've got a lot of these modalities. Remember, I'm a regenerative medicine guy, so I look at cell therapy, I look at photobiomodulation, I look at molecular hydrogen inhalation, and I'll show you our publication that came out in June. What is the movement? The movement is based on this balanced approach that we discussed and it's about these guys coming together. And so we started a program, very simple. It's just a small QR code, scan it, give us a saliva sample. Let's start somewhere in any village. We can take the saliva sample. We worked 6 months to try to stabilize the DNA out of that, and we're able to let you know who you should focus on, your budgets and your work. Labs, clinics can join, communities, hospitals, organizations joining the scan and screen movement. Scan and screen movement is the more people joining, the more labs joining, the more hospitals, the more scanning, the better outcomes you'll get. This is what it is. Currently, we've got our own list of clinics and organizations that I worked for and helped establish, our wellness centers, our screening, and more to come. Now, since we have ran out of time, I chose two cases, because all of this sounds nice, but show us the real deal, right? Let's start with case number 1. Okay, I just picked 2. So this is a common case, probably will remind a lot of our sisters in the room of people they know or even themselves. I've given the same presentation in Cape Town last month, a month before last month, and one doctor raised their hand and said, "I'm that woman. What can you do to help?" And this is what it looks: stress, fatigue, brain fog, poor sleep quality, right? How many people come to you with that? What do? You start counseling, which is fantastic. A doctor is a counselor or a consultant. You consult with them. But what can you give them in terms of an evidence-based approach to getting better? We've done an investigation. Our journey has 3 parts: investigation, healing, and maintenance. Investigation showed a lot of things here. We don't have time to go through it, but I want to show you. We put them on a healing program which has a combination of molecular hydrogen inhalation, for which I have a publication on that I'll show you at the end, as well as photobiomodulation, as well as proper supplementation based on the response to the supplement. How many of you use omega-3 to treat high cholesterol? Not a lot. One is thinking about it. Okay, well, it works with some and it doesn't work with a lot. So that we're getting next month, and inshallah, we're going to launch the list of SNPs that tell you if the professor gives me an omega-3, if my cholesterol is going to come down or not. Because we got it. We know exactly which part of your code makes it work and not. And we're talking inexpensive way of looking at all of this. All right, so healing, vagal nerve stimulation. You want people to have their parasympathetic nervous system relaxed. Vagal nerve stimulation is there, and it works if you've got the right frequencies. Personalized supplementations with a dietitian. Our nutritionists work with them. So under the roof of what we do, we've got osteopaths, nutritionists, and clinical dietitians, physicians, fitness experts. So when we design, and I'll show you some of the fitness programs that based on the evidence obtained from the lab, we repeat it and we show the client. Let me show you how the results look like. So when this lady, same lady, right? We're talking about the same 50-year-old lady, came to us. This is our own design, telomere-based biological age testing. 50 years old, she's 61 biologically. Her telomeric length says she's 61, and that doesn't lie. 1.22 is her aging pace. Very healthy woman, by the way. She runs, she does everything. Stress is eating her alive. And look at that now. With this, it means every single cell is 61 years old. The risk is that of a 61-year-old, not of a 50-year-old. And at 1.22 aging pace, she's ready to crash. This lady has already come to us after going to Switzerland and going to the States to meet the functional doctor, has been diagnosed as Behçet syndrome because of the office ulcers, which has nothing to do with that. But anyways, this is how it looked. And now we work with her, and 3 months later, the healing, nobody heals in one day. If you give someone a pill and the symptom goes, that's not healing. That's called magic, you pull a rabbit out of the hat. You didn't heal anything, right? Nephrology knows that. But we've had people with 17 EGFR, up 27 today. 27. That's healing. But it takes time. It takes you 3 to 4 months to get to there. Think of one blood cycle. That's what you need. Working with your patient for one blood cycle, right? First interrogation with the patient will take you 30 minutes, 45 minutes. But then they go home, you work with them one blood cycle, and this is the results of this respected patient. Here. This is not 1, 2, 3, 4. After one blood cycle, her telomeric length has dropped from 61 to 55. She had turned 51 at that time. Her aging pace slowed dramatically. All right? What about her sleep? Is she sleeping better? Yeah, let's look at that. This is our sleep analysis study. At baseline, she goes, you know how many of you have 6 hours of sleep a day? Sleep, 6 hours, right? But you know very well from basic biochemistry, basic immunology, without 8 hours of without 2 hours, 25% of your sleep in deep sleep mode, your immune system never resets. It never resets. It doesn't work. Whether you're dealing with asthma, osteoarthritis, it does not work. This lady was going to bed and sleeping for a total, here's her REM, her light sleep, that's about 6 hours, was awake in the middle for 9 minutes. 8 minutes was her deep sleep only. We work with her. I have one patient from Cape Town. He has sarcoidosis. And the first thing the doctor said, cortisone, you know, the regular regimen, conventional. I said, first thing I need to see your sleep. 0 minutes of deep sleep. 0 for 10 years. That's what happens to the immune system. And we can see it now. It's not hypothetical anymore. So we say to her, Miss, we need to work on that. Mid-journey, look at that now. Getting 1 hour and 12 minutes of deep sleep. And her current position is like this. Same almost 6 hours, 7 hours, 2 hours and 5 minutes of deep sleep. And the patient takes the device, goes home. We get all the data already through the Wi-Fi, so it's sitting in her profile because we built a digital platform to acquire this simple Wi-Fi, nothing complicated. When she came, you know how many people you tell them you have to do mindfulness? We are Muslims, right? أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبِ. So people close their eyes and go like this, you know? But inside there's a war. Well, before you couldn't tell it, but I can tell you now. So she was like this for 30 minutes. Only 29% of that was in deep calm mode where the brain is relaxed. Mid-journey, pushing and she's very stressed, pushed it up to 37%. She's able now to do 30 minutes with almost 50% in deep relaxation mode. And everything has changed. The fog, all of that is gone. Next one and the last, case number 7, 51-year-old woman. This woman was a personal friend of my family, actually. And she had a lot of family history of cancer. So her aunt had it, her uncle had it. So I said, listen, just give us a saliva sample, just a spit in this tube. So we've done the saliva sample, we've done the analysis, and we discovered that she's positive for BRCA2. Later on, she was so enthusiastic about this that she went and actually asked 18 family members of her family to do the testing. Test is about $100 or less even. But doing the testing, 11 of the 18 were positive, carrying the same mutation. So when we did the tests, this is how it looked. So this is our own in-house developed testing. All of this is R&D in-house. Positive for a BRCA2 mutation, one of those DNA repair genes, right? She was 50 at that time, and we could find that SNP is there, and her risk is very, very high. So the next thing is, as you sit right now, what works on your cells and works on your metabolism? It's your free radicals. Free radicals come from all that sugar, that fantastic buffet, right? No exercise. So who has a good understanding of free radicals? Not a lot, like me. Now, none of that was in medical school. We didn't take that in medical school. I went to medical school 30 years ago. We didn't study any of this. Any of that. That's why I give this to freshly graduating doctors. They need to know that because that's the future. That's the future of medicine. Free radicals, think about it. So who has an old car? Oh, mashallah, everybody makes a lot of money here. Where's the man who was talking about the payroll? Well, old cars, when you press the gas, you see the exhaust gives you that black smoke, that's free radicals. When you buy a new car with a tuned engine, you press the gas, you see nothing, and drops of water come in. That means you're fine-tuned. So what happens? Your engine, your Krebs cycle, the thing that we didn't like to read a lot about, is not working very well, with lots of exhaust and a lot of fumes coming out. Those fumes are highly reactive. They work with your cholesterol, and they form oxysterol, which is the main cause for heart, anything, you name it, stroke, everything, as well as cancer. So the next thing is we said, Miss M, you have a mutation that seems to be very bad. By the way, she does her mammogram every 6 months, free, no problem. She looks after herself. Highly stressed. So the next thing is we go and say, let's look at your free radicals. And this is how her free radicals looked like. This is the scale. 656 is the level of free radicals. We measure mainly peroxide, hydrogen peroxide, and nitric oxide. Antioxidants look pretty good in her body. She's having her vitamins and she's looking after herself. But this is a woman who's got a BRCA2 mutation, who crossed 50 years old, almost menopausal, walking with this level of toxins in her every day to work and back. What do you expect? Very easy to develop cancer. So we immediately put her on our program, molecular hydrogen inhalation, detoxification, and this is how her results looked like after one session. Dropped to 420. This is a massive drop. Massive drop. So much so that she comes the next day and does a second session, and this is how her free radicals look like. This is real life monitoring. And at the end, I think I'd like to go here and show you this. This is a publication for those of you who want to review what we've done. This was published in June of last year. The impact of hydrogen inhalation therapy, novel study, the only one on molecular hydrogen inhalation and blood reactive oxygen species, randomized study, almost 30% reduction, and I've seen more. I've seen 60 and 70% reduction in terms of our studies. We've got a lot more, 350 pages of specific testing to monitor the patient and be able to look at it. Some of those tests cost as low as $5, but it makes you start somewhere in the clinic and take them through the healing journey, as well as our therapies, technologies that we have. And I think I'm already over time. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. I don't know where am I the presenter now? He's left, apparently. So, questions. Anybody has questions until the boss comes? No one. Fantastic.
All right, guys.
Thank you very much.
Interesting stuff we are hearing today. No, I'm okay. Anyone with questions? Yeah, sure.
I can't believe my namesake doesn't have questions. We are the three Ahmeds. We always have questions. So I can assure you he has a question.
All right. Mashallah.
Anyway, thanks a lot for that wonderful talk. I think it was very, very illuminating.
Thank you.
I think we live in two worlds. So I'm talking from my perspective. On one world, we want very high level, excellent stuff like what we are doing, and has always been aspirational to do the most wonderful things and hoping that whatever we are doing is going to take us to the next level. But sitting in this room, I was actually having lunch. I won't mention the name of the doctor, but as I was having lunch, I try to eat healthy, as you can see. But when I come, you're told
you play at football team.
Yes, I have a whole football team actually. But the point is, as I was having lunch, I met 3 different doctors, all literally begging for discounts. I run a lab, as you know, for discounts on like the most basic tests. So I'm not gonna belabor the point, but we live in these two worlds. You have come, You go to Cape Town, Egypt, all over the place. We are in discussions about joining your network.
Oh, pleasure.
How do we bridge that gap? Because, you know, even for someone like Dr. Ahmed Tahir or Dr. Josiah Huka who sees a wide spectrum of patients, and that's the discussion we're having here, how do you bridge that gap? Because, or rather, how do you practice in this era where you guys are 100 miles ahead, and we are running at a total space where other people are even just basically asking for the most basic of tests? It's a bit of a dilemma.
No, brilliant question. Thank you very much. I just want to say, as I said, after I trained in very poor areas, I had only 3 injections in the ER, so I had no medications to give patients, so it is real. I know what you're going through. But at first, really, and that's why the movement has got educate, recruit, make a difference. We need to talk in a different session with the primary care physicians, the number one. These are the number one people that before they go to the consultants and the specialists. And we need them to believe in this, right? And we need to make sure they start somewhere. So the answer to you is it has to start by them saying, well, our respected colleague in the morning was talking about diabetes, said the patient comes in, does this. Then we say, you can go to the doctor's lab and just do a simple free radicals test. It's not going to cost you a lot. Once the patient has knowledge is so powerful. Oh, like somebody monitoring their blood pressure. Blood pressure is high, I got to look after my food now. Knowledge is powerful for the patient and the doctor. And then the interventional methods I mentioned here are available and they're not expensive and you can get them in. Honestly, it's not about cost. I mean, my friend who's pioneering this molecular hydrogen inhalation devices, he's from Korea, and he grew up in a very poor environment when he was young, Professor Lee. And the issue we have is really an educational issue for doctors. I'm sorry to say this. I didn't learn this in med school. Nobody told me anything about this. And if you're in your day-to-day where you spend 3 to 7 minutes talking to your patient and that's all, you're not going to be able to provide quality of care. We cannot solve all the problems, but at least if I'm in Mombasa or if I am in Nairobi, I should be asking, where is a center where Professor Rashid or Dr. Abdullah can send his cousin, where they can at least receive that kind of care. And trust me, people spend a lot of money on disease, so much more than they spend on prevention and wellness. So we need to start. So the answer is series of educations. Muslims here should pioneer this. Invite you to come to our center. Come and see these things in real life. We'll test you. Everybody that walks in, we do the testing for them. We show them, this is how your body looks like. This is how you look today. Not the regular CBCs and the lipid profile. It's just not, it's not the same. Yes, doctor.
So we'll take
one more
time. We'll take 2 more questions, okay? But my thing was the cheaper way is to follow the Prophet. The seerah and the Prophet. You know how they used to eat, right?
Yes.
They never used to eat more than once a day.
Yes.
So,
and to that point, my brother, Ramadan and diabetes. My 12th year now. Ramadan has 3 meals: salad, soup. That's it, and water. Date, if you take a date, and you know, people read that hadith, it says وَكَانَ إِفْطَارُهُ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ عَلَى تَمْرَةٍ أَوْ مَزْقَةَ لَبَنٍ. And then they flip the page, they find the next hadith. So what did he eat afterwards? That was it. That's fasting. Islam is about that. That's his breakfast. Nothing until suhoor. That's it. So, what did I do in my home? Everyone, I have 5 children, they're grown now, but every one of my children in Ramadan who loses a kilo gets $100. And everybody who gains a kilo pays $1,000. And trust me, they wait for Ramadan. By the end of Ramadan, they're like, we're dreaming about a chicken, or, you know, because it's only soup. But we, the Muslim, are not fasting, we're feasting, and you know that, and I know that, right? That's the truth.
So let's try following that, inshallah. One question, maybe because I have the mic. Sorry.
Sure.
Magnesium. Like you're doing the hydrogen therapy. Yeah. What do you take about magnesium?
Two types, magnesium, think all neurodegenerative, threonate, right? Use magnesium threonate, 600 to 800 micrograms, fantastic. Along with something called cytocholine, right? Cytocholine, magnesium threonate, massive improvement. Magnesium, other complex magnesium, now we're talking about the citrates and the others, you use them for smooth muscle relaxation. All these people who have constipations, have colorectal problems, magnesium complex can help. People with even muscle stiffness, magnesium complex can help. But the thing is, my brother that's why our R&D is working on that. Right now, as we speak, you measure magnesium for the patient at his lab, and he's normal.
Yeah, it's normal.
But that's not what works on your cells. It's your intracellular magnesium. So we're designing right now, our biochemists working on an intracellular magnesium test, which will be able to tell you if you've got enough magnesium in your cells. We're working by looking at that, combining it with RBC. So magnesium, fantastic.
Okay.
Yes.
Shukran for a very good talk.
Pleasure.
Or instead of having 1 meal a day, you can have 3 meals,
yes,
but divide your stomach into 3,
yes,
and only put food in 1/3.
Okay.
Okay. Just by the way.
That will
just to add on to what Ahmed Kalibi has said, it's really the cost that is prohibitive. For example, the BRCA gene.
Yes.
To do BRCA gene in Kenya now,
yes, you
need 160,000 Kenya shillings.
How much is that in dollars?
That's not affordable.
How much is that in dollars?
Divide by 136, about $1,000 plus dollars.
1,200, it says.
Yeah.
He's in Kenya also.
Yes.
What? So how much is that in US dollars?
About.
No. So we have a program right now running with Amman, with King Hussein Cancer Center. They're screening 22, not 1, 22 common genes, and we gave them a special price of $100. That's it.
So that's the challenge. For example, so BRCA gene, which is very common, and even if you want
not BRCA, 22. You have to measure the others.
That's the cost for 22 for $100.
Yeah.
That would be very nice if you could introduce it here.
Absolutely.
And if we wanted
you can introduce it, talk to the team here.
Okay, and the other one is the next generation sequencing,
yes,
now to look at the genetics.
Yes.
It's another $100 and something, and it will take a month. It's not even been done in the country.
So let me answer your questions. Number one,
the
lab that I established in 2018 is fully equipped with NGS. Everything. I've been behind every PopGen project in this region for 10 years.
How
That's
much?
One second. Let me answer. I'm going to answer your question. The $100 is done through an NGS sequencing. This test you saw there is NGS, number 2. Number 3, the turnaround time for us is 5 to 7 business days because we run it 3 times a week. We get samples from as far as Romania. So the answer is it's accessible. Your information were correct 10 years ago. And probably that's why it's so expensive here. And I agree with you. While it should be more cheap here. Sorry, but Kammp should lead the way. All these lovely names, like these guys, their margins are super high. Let them sponsor only women working in healthcare for $100. It's even better. But there is a state of affairs, and maybe Kammp should be leading that way. Happy to talk to people creating a national or East African program for that. Yes.
So everything is going genetics. Even hypertension is going genetics. You look at SNPs.
Yes.
For hypertension.
Yes.
Dr. Tahir, you had a question?
Yes, Dr. Tahir.
Yeah, thank you very much for your amazing talk.
Thank you.
I was really fascinated and for that thought-provoking presentation.
Sure.
It's a really paradigm shift. But so what concerns me is how easy is it to implement in your clinic? It sounds so complex. There's so many facets. You seem to have mitigated the cost issue. I don't know whether that's true or not, and whether Kalebi can take up those costs realistically. Hopefully he can, but even if he can, I'm still worried about
integration.
How do we implement? How long will it take me to learn this subject so that I can practice it in my patients? And before Dr. Sokwala takes the mic from me, because he won't give me, I have another concept. You've talked about preventive oncology.
Yes.
I've always thought about this aspect. I'm seeing a lot of cancers, and one thing that crosses my mind is the way we deal with plastics now. People my age will remember in the younger days, all edibles and drinks were in glass bottles. Treetop was in a glass bottle, sodas were in a glass bottle, but now things are in plastic bottles. What do you think about plastics and cancer?
Thank you. Very, very good question. Very important for a nephrologist, by the way. Thank you. Comes extremely insightful. Answer is integration. The way we've done it is we've divided this into 4 modules. You got to have a lab. You don't need to have a lab. It's a lot of money. So to spend $100, don't set up $5 million sample. But understand the book that I could not go through, when to ask for what. That's one, which will take you no more than 2 days to understand it. That's one, the lab. Then the clinic. Then the wellness center, whether it's a personal trainer next to you or some people running daily. And now we're launching, beginning of the year, wearables that are very cheap. So people can put them, and at your clinic you'll be seeing how many steps they're doing. So your assistant, you won't be doing it. So to integrate this and make it a reality, it is possible. You just need to know a little bit about this. You'll find that it's super easy and simple. It's not difficult because it's modular. You don't need a big center with a clinic and a lab. I know what you're thinking, but we started this very small. Our small clinic in Dubai has got 2 visiting rooms only, 2 examination rooms. GPs and family medicine doctors, nothing more. Come to plastics, very important question. So I've been concerned about this as well because of the following story. A 36-year-old female comes to me, had 1 child, extremely anxious, and she wants to get pregnant again, not able to get pregnant. What's going on? Husband is fine, we checked everything, looks okay. So I tell the team, let's check the heavy metal toxins. Nothing, no problem. So I asked my team to design a test called XenoChecks, and the test is not expensive as well. And it's a urine test, and I'm looking at 2 things and 2 things only. Bisphenol A, microplastic. Number 2, glyphosates. You know what glyphosates are. I'm sure in Kenya you have a lot of them. A famous name is Roundup. So you use Roundup to spray all your crops, as you know, because it's a safe pesticide. Safe relatively, which means your kidney can clear it 100%, but mine may not, right? So we do the test for this lady, and lo and behold, she's super toxic on both BPA and glyphosates. 1 session in your clinic, chelating agent, put sodium, EDTA, a lot of antioxidants, 30 minutes of IV, she goes home, we retest her, she's back to normal. She was PCOS as well. 2 months later, her cycle is back. Very easy. But you got to do the test in his lab. It's a very simple urine test, not expensive. Yes, doctor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Tamer. I think we have lots of questions, but we are with Dr. Tamer still around, and we can approach him on the side and ask him all those questions. Thank you very much. Shukran jazilan. So the next session is on digital health, and the moderators, Dr. Yasmin Ikata. Dr. Yasmin, is she here? So I'll hand over the mic to Dr. Yasmin, and she can, take it up from there.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Dr. Yasmin. I'm a medical officer. I'm doing Masters in Public Health. I'm currently doing my research in factors associated with musculoskeletal diseases. I'm very much interested in what Dr. Tamer has discussed initially. I'm very much interested in preventive medicine, because it is effective. I graduated in Turkey, and it is more of what we were completed a certificate in healthcare systems management. So we're going to be discussing digital health with Dr. Maknoon, and Dr. Sabir. I'll allow them to introduce themselves.
So think about Bitcoin. I own a Bitcoin enough to the point that if you move in any place in this world, anyone who would open Bitcoin, he will know that this particular Bitcoin is owned by Ismail Maknoun. So that's the same principle that we apply in healthcare. One of our major problems facing in healthcare right now, improving healthcare, is data, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. We have a huge problem with data acquisition. We have a huge problem with data analysis. So we have to find ways to start getting more data. And blockchain technology actually helps in that, in the sense that if I implement a web app or a mobile app today with blockchain technology, and then I set it up with wearable devices for my patient, for example. So a patient will come to me and say, okay, doc, I want to join in your program. What can you do for me? So we set them up on a 6-month program. And it revolves around lifestyle adjustment, ecotherapy. There's a lot of nitty-gritties, a lot of which Dr. Tamer had already mentioned. So what we do ideally is we usually put them through wearable devices. So ideally you would want to know how many steps you're taking. You want to know what's your daily blood pressures. For those who are doing glucose, continuous CGMs, continuous glucose monitoring, it's also one of the things that actually applies blockchain technology. So what we would do is we would take that bit, fit it in a way that you and you alone are the only person who can access that bit of information, no one else. We understand that data security is a problem that we're also facing nowadays. So blockchain technology tends to cut that off. And it makes it accessible only to the people that you're going to give permission to. I don't know if that makes sense. And then now we implement artificial intelligence using blockchain technology. So AI basically means, think of your brain. Your brain is the one that controls everything in your body. So it's the same thing. So AI is the brain behind technology and that digital health. So we create large language modules, which ideally they're supposed to tell that particular bit of technology on how they're supposed to work and implement. So I want my blockchain technology to do A, B, C. I will have to develop a large language module which will train, ideally it will train the blockchain technology into working in that particular platform. And then by using AR, VR, it cuts off the cost of patients constantly having to attend to clinics. I know telemedicine, previously we used to use computers, and then phones developed and they became even better. So we have some practitioners who are using phones, which is fine. So nowadays we have certain healthcare services which are implementing augmented reality and virtual reality. So think of it as you as a healthcare practitioner, you're seated within the comfort of your office, but then you have a patient who perhaps cannot come. All he or she has to do is just put on their VR set, and you can have a one-on-one discussion or one-on-one consultation using that particular VR technology. Augmented technology, mostly we use it in physical activity and our ecotherapy. So we usually set up small gardens for our patients, around 5 square meter, 10 square meter, and 15 square meter, depending on the size of their families. So we usually, sometimes you can provide augmented reality goggles. So what they can do is they take videos of their day-to-day gardening activities, so ecotherapy, to help them reduce their stress levels, their cortisol levels, and at the same time, those particular videos, they can implement them and put them in their VR. So whenever they feel that they're too stressed, all they have to do is just put on their goggles, and they can literally imagine and picture themselves walking within their gardens. Thank you.
So basically, VR is creating a reality world for someone's happy place.
Yeah, so, sorry, so there's virtual reality and there's augmented reality. The difference is, if I put on a virtual reality eyepiece, it will literally block everything within this particular room. I would not be able to see anything here. So it's a whole new set of world now. In augmented reality I can still see here, but think of it as those tiny little specks that you usually see moving around your eyes. So I can perhaps see, let's say, my vital signs here. I can see any other parameter that I would like to see. But at the same time, I can still see everyone who is in my presence.
Okay, so Daktari has extensively discussed basically everything, everything concerning the latest developments that are using technology to give better healthcare services. So the next question is to the lady who is being given money by Red Cross. Okay, who is managing Red Cross's money? So maybe for her, what we will ask her is how do you use AI to take care of patients with mental health?
Okay, so we tested out something recently with our youth department, and I think we know this, but we don't fully understand the mental health. I don't want to call them cases, but we have a big mental health gap in Kenya and in Africa in general, right? What does that mean? That means that we don't have real friends to talk to. We have friends, but do we have people who check in on you for real? Who asks you, how are you? How was your day? Right? So we tested out this with a couple of our partners, and we set up what we're calling a mental health chatbot, right? So it's a little robot that roams around our Kenya Red Cross pages, and if you come there, she'll pop up and ask you, hi, my name is Dr. Imani, would you like to talk to me? Right? So we didn't think it would work because it was a test after all. Guys, you won't imagine the amount of people who actually responded and how many people had conversations with this little robot asking her, how are you? How is your day going? People need friends, right? So we've found somewhat an alternative for it, and they talk to the robot all day and find out what they're doing tomorrow, and she basically is a prompt to a referral for our mental health specialist now, who sits on a toll-free line, and they now do the actual referral for you. But the mental health chatbot basically acts like a cyber friend, right? And we're actually trying to accelerate that, and hopefully it can help us manage cyberbullying, whereas it's not really social media monitoring because I don't think there's policy for that yet, but she can sit on Twitter, and if you're about to post a hate comment, then she'd send you a prompt and be like, are you sure you want to post that, right? Because cyberbullying is really big in, I think, the world in general right now. So we're in the background trying to see how to manage this, all with the mental health conversation, right? So we're doing a lot in AI in terms of MHPSS. Yeah, we're also doing it. Can I continue? Yes. Okay. We also have a lot of predictive analysis we're doing. One of my projects that I'm very proud of is the drones project. So we're using drones basically to help us collect data, whether it's for mapping, risk monitoring, for surveillance, health surveillance. And we are trying to bring on board the use case of medical good delivery, so last mile delivery. So whether it is we're sending to you a self-testing kit, whether we're sending to you vaccines. So we work with a lot of communities, right? And some of them are very far off. So in the event of floods or drought or conflict, they're pretty much cut off from essential services, right? So we're testing our drones with a company called Wings for Aid. And at the moment, the smaller drones can carry, I think, only maybe 5 to 10 kgs. But Wings for Aid have built what looks like a helicopter, probably the size of this stage, but it's a drone, and it can carry almost 1,000 kgs. So these are some of the technological advancements that we're very proud of to pilot and to help us bridge costs, bridge time. Thanks.
Okay, so the next question is to Dr. McNoon. I think the only topic we haven't touched on extensively is maybe telemedicine. So given the growth of telemedicine, how do you ensure that patients feel comfortable and that their privacy is maintained, especially within culturally and religiously sensitive concepts?
Okay, so when you speak about privacy, I don't think it's more of a cultural and religious thing. I think it's more of a human issue. Everyone requires and needs a certain level of privacy. And one thing I can say, implementing telemedicine, especially in our society, it was one of the hardest challenges I've ever had to take up on. And it's very hard to sell telemedicine. So we had to find a way to actually transition from traditional medicine into telemedicine itself. So what we usually do is we set up our program in such a way that we start first by doing an actual physical consultation. So either home visit, which most of our patients tend to prefer, because number one, our initial consultations would ideally take a long time, around an hour or an hour and a half or so. And then once you have everything that you need in terms of your data from your patient, then now during that particular consultation is when you actually sell the idea of telemedicine. Because now the patient can actually feel more comfortable being treated within the confines of their homes, as opposed to having to come and line up in front of everyone and everybody. And now, once they enjoy that bit of privacy, when you tell them that we can actually go a step ahead, instead of you having to waste more money in terms of transport costs and everything, we can have a basically one-on-one conversation, either over video, over the phone, or we can have just a simple call conversation, or most preferably lately, as we're trying to implement so far, is VR. So we equip them with a VR headset. And then whenever they feel the urge to actually have a consultation with the clinician or with the doctor, so all they have to do is create a pre-call conversation, pre-call consultation. So the doctor would accept it based on specific timings, and then all the patient has to do is just put on their goggles and have their consultation.
Okay, I believe that's it from our end. Do we have, maybe we can have questions from the floor?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I think congratulations to you all. I think you've touched on an area that is going to really change the way we practice medicine. Can I ask, specifically to your last point about VR in kind of telemedicine, why VR? Why not a simple, Zoom call or WhatsApp call? What additional value would VR bring? Obviously, it increases perhaps the cost, I don't know, but I suspect there's more equipment needed here. Mm-hmm. You just need a phone or a device of some sort. What value would it add? And I say this from a little bit of background, because over the last almost now 5 years since COVID started, at Aga Khan, between myself and my other colleagues in the neurology fraternity, we've been doing a lot of telemedicine consultations. Indeed, there's now a study led by one of my colleagues looking at examining patients, doing a neurological examination on telemedicine. So it would be interesting to see how valid that examination would be. And I've certainly examined patients on telemedicine and made a diagnosis like Parkinson's disease or things like that. So I think there are, and I suspect the VR component might be useful on that examination bit, but maybe you can comment. Thank you.
So the reason why we opted to go a step ahead towards AR and VR technologies for two reasons. As we said, I'm more of a lifestyle medicine practitioner, number one. So I put a lot of emphasis on physical activity and food production. So diet for me is very important. From the clinical perspective, one of the greatest questions, or one of the many questions that I used to get, especially amongst colleagues, is, Daktari, how do you address the issue of physical touch? Our patients are used to coming to the clinics. So how would you ideally address it? So yes, initially we used to do video conferencing. We used to do phone consultations, and ideally, yes, it will work. But then we realized that some patients actually enjoy better the experience of having to feel like we are still within the confines of the doctor's room. So it gives them that kind of a mental idea that, my doctor might be far away, but he's still very close to me. So he can actually feel me. It is about imagery, yes.
Is there other senses involved?
Not at the moment, but we are working with some biotech to develop those as well, yes.
Do you have any other question?
Yes.
No.
Thank you very much. A very interesting presentation. One, I'm not much of a digital guy, but all this VR or conversation you have, is your privacy and where it is stored and how private is this privacy or this conversation you're going to be having or data discussing that nobody can get access to it. That's one. Number two, now us as clinicians, it's our work, it's our job. We're still there, patient comes, pays consultation fees, sees you, and then after that you with the pen and go. What happens with VR consultation or digital consultation? You get paid by Bitcoin or?
Okay, that's an interesting question. One thing I would say before I answer that particular question is, and I will highly encourage medics, we really need to keep up with the times. We really need to learn and study and explore. There's a lot that is happening in the world right now. It's not just here, everywhere in the world. And I find it that we try, especially our education system in the third world countries. I have a colleague of mine who is studying in Stanford. Is studying in Stanford medicine, and they actually have a unit where they bring some people from Y Combinator. It's a startup accelerator that deals specifically on technology. They actually bring lecturers to lecture future doctors in different advancements in technology, and they actually address some of the issues that you address in terms of privacy and costing and how do we cost, right? So I know we are used to the traditional fee for service. Fair enough, and I know it's been working. The reason why I started specifically by stating, if you can remember, I started by saying stating the importance of value. The entire world is moving towards value-based care. And one of the value-based care payment model is usually bundle branch payment model. So what we do for our patients, mostly because we deal with patients with chronic illnesses. So let me give you a case scenario perhaps to be able to answer your question. I like my patient to be able to, and this is something that I feel like it was a problem for me as well. We've all been sick at some point. We've all been patients apart from just being doctors ourselves. So we've all experienced the sting of having to go into your pocket, or you go into a healthcare facility and then you're told, okay, fine, you need a panel of this amount of tests. And perhaps you may or you may not have that amount of money at that time, and then you'll be like, oh, okay, doctor, I'll probably come back later. Fair enough. I know it's a system that has been working, and I know most of us, we're used to it, but think of it this way. Assuming you have a diabetic patient or a hypertensive patient, now you know this particular patient will need this particular number of tests, let's say in 6 months or 1 year, for example. He will need the basic hemograms, he will need the kidney function test, they'll need the lipid profile, the A1C levels, and we all know how often they will need that. So how about we bundle that into 6 months? When your patient walks into your consultation room, you tell them, and including your consultation fees as well. So fine, in the next 6 months, this is how much you're gonna need to spend for your health. And this is what we're gonna do for you. this is the number of tests that you're going to need. This is probably the number of medication that you might need. Not much of a fan of that, but let's say, for example, don't you think your patient might be more receptive towards that, to the point that, okay, fine, I know if I'm going to come to you again for the next 6 months, this is how much I'm going to need. It actually makes it easier for them in a way that they can pre-plan their finances. Finance was a problem for us as well, because the cost, it's still expensive. Healthcare is expensive. I think we can all agree to that. Healthcare is expensive, and yes, doctors also have to eat. So the question, that's a problem, that's a challenge that we also needed to address. So we needed to find a way to actually come up with a way for our patients to create a certain level of financial freedom instead of them having to go through their pockets. That's why we started developing small urban gardens for them. And those urban gardens are actually tailored in such a way that we try to target our patients to be able to create, at the very least, 5,000 shillings every month, at the very least. So for 5,000 shillings in 6 months, that should be more than enough to cater for your UECs. It should be more than enough to cater for your lipid profile. Should be more than enough to cater for your A1C, which you'll probably need it twice. And some of them actually are quite happy. They're quite happy with that. I don't know if I answered your question, Dr. Ari. Not yet? Okay. Picture this. My patient comes to me. Food for me is important. So we set up a 5 square meter garden for them. And in it, they produce tomatoes, they produce iceberg salads, they produce some spring onions, they produce cabbages, kale, and all that. The main goal is for them to produce food for themselves, number one. Reason being, they don't have to go into their pockets to go and buy food. Automatically they save a certain amount of money. That amount of money can be used in their healthcare service provision. For example, they can go and say, fine, instead of me having to buy this amount of food every day, now I can use this amount of money to go in and buy my medication instead. And there's always a surplus, because we usually, we created it based on specific amount of family members. So there's always a surplus which they can sell. And as I said, we target at least 5,000 shillings every month. So if you as a patient, you're making at least 5,000 shillings every month, and you know you're gonna need, you need to buy your medication. That is 5,000 shillings extra that you have to go and buy your medication. That is 5,000 shillings extra that you can actually use to go and do your lab tests.
So they make a real garden, mean?
Yes, a real garden.
You turn them to be farmers?
Yes. That's why we call it ecotherapy. There are actually scientific studies. There are actually scientific studies that have actually shown that it tends to help a lot, especially with patients with chronic illnesses. One of the greatest challenges that I'm sure you've all experienced with patients with chronic illnesses, it's usually depression. They are very depressive conditions.
And the payment, how do they pay you?
Cash.
But you're doing virtual?
Yes.
M-Pesa?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So at the moment, perhaps something to add. We are working on a platform right now, which has already been ongoing, but there's one aspect of the finance that we are adding. Inshallah, we'll be launching it in March, actually. So we are working with some colleagues, two of them are in Romania, to implement a system where from whatever it is that they sell with regards to the produce, all they have to do is just put it in their system, and then the system automatically cuts it off from the clinic. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think it's an exciting discussion. I think for most of us, the most virtual thing they've ever done is a Zoom clinic. And you feel like you belong in the Stone Age. To this congregation, how do you foresee bridging them from their current state to the modern world of virtual, augmented realities, and telemedicine?
Exposure is key, Doc. As I said, I've been practicing as a as a medical officer for quite a number of years now. But then I came across, when I did precision medicine, I came to understand the importance and actual value of lifestyle changes and lifestyle adjustment. And one thing I came to notice, unfortunately, to say this, is we don't actually pay, we don't pay enough attention to this. A patient will come and at most, yes, we would advise them to eat healthy, to work out, but I think we need to go a step ahead and help them develop meal plans, help them develop fitness plans as well. Where are we going, and how can we implement this? Kammp should really help with this. We have, for example, we have a tech hub here in Mombasa, for example. We should be able to cooperate between we medics as Kammp, for example, and the tech hub. We have challenges as medics that we need to be addressed. All we have to do, I simply had to go and study digital health myself. I had no idea about blockchain technology. All I knew about blockchain technology was just Bitcoin, actually. Telemedicine for me was limited to, as you said, Zoom calls. But exposure really helps me. I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn, by the way. So the more I read, the more courses I did, the more I realized that it shouldn't be expensive. Surprisingly, when I wanted to develop my web app, for example, so I went on Upwork. It's a very common platform for service provision. And I put it out there. I want someone to help me develop a web app which will have A, B, C. The cost of which alone, someone quoted me at $60,000 US. Yes. So I engaged someone else in Dubai, the cost of which came out at around $180,000, including blockchain technology, artificial intelligence, and augmented reality. Very expensive. But, so I took a step back and I asked myself, can I just go and study this? And all this information that you can actually get online. It's about exposure, education. We have to educate ourselves. We have to expose ourselves and understand that medicine is advancing. Dr. Tamer just mentioned about telomere age. I am sure there are very few of us who actually have an understanding of what telomere age actually have to do with our own age. You might have a telomere age of 65, but I'm barely 24 years. It happens. So it's all a matter of exposure. We need to read. We need to expose ourselves.
Okay, another thing is, I think his point was compensation.
Yes.
For the service. So one of the challenges after COVID, for example, for those who see insured patients, patient comes from home, travels with a relative, lines up, pays, sees a doctor, yes, for example, 3,000 shillings, yes, or 4,000 shillings. No. Then when the insurance said, because this patient is not coming to you and you're not doing much, I end up paying 500 shillings.
No.
So basically the market killed the technology. They said, rather it be inconvenient, but I get compensated for the same 15-20 minutes consultation 8 times the amount. The hospitals didn't want it, the medics didn't welcome it, and the insurance canceled it because they saw it's an opportunity for fraud. Mm-hmm. Someone didn't come and you'll bill 2, 3, 5 consultations and it's out. So how do you foresee this?
Okay, 2 things. Number 1, blockchain technology helps a lot with that, because with blockchain technology, as we said, it's a decentralized and it's very specific in terms of reliability and security, in the sense that if I have a telemedicine conference today, for example, between me and patient X, there are only 2 people who are going to have access to that, patient X and me, the service provider. So if an insurance third party is going to come, all the clinic has to do is, this was the services that was provided. I know most insurance are not fans of telemedicine, by the way, and which brings me to point number 2. As a Muslim, I am not a fan of insurance. that's why I was saying, one of the greatest challenges that I had to come across is how do I finance this? How do I make sure that as a service provider, I get my fair share of compensation, and at the same time, I also give adequate and proper service to my patient. So I had to create, we actually had to go on we went back and forth. So we started doing a bit more research in blockchain technology. Actually wrote an article about it, blockchain technology and Islamic finance. We had to go again and start reading on Islamic finance, because let's be honest, it's the best form of finance that we can possibly use. So the question is now, how do we implement blockchain technology in Islamic finance and our platform? So we had to go back and forth. We encounter a challenge, we try to find a solution. And the basic and core has always been value. Value for me as a doctor, value for my patient, value for the entire supply chain, value for the pharmaceutical industry as well. Thank you.
Very interactive discussion. Thank you, Daktari. Thank you too. That's all we had time for now. So I'm being informed that we should go for Salatul Asr.
Thank you very much.
Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you, Yasmin. Thank you, Ishmael. Thank you, Sabrina or Sobira? Sobira. Okay, that was an excellent discussion, and I'm proud to have Dr. Ishmael Maknoon, who is my medical officer, was my intern, then medical officer at Msambweni County Referral Hospital. We are actually very late, so we'll give 15 minutes break for Salah, then we all have to come back. 15 minutes for Salah. We all have to come back here for the AGM. AGM is the basic and the most important part of this conference. And this year's AGM is special because we have to get new officials, because the current team or the current officials have served their 2 years, inshallah. So it will be an exciting time, and I want you all to come back here. So I urge those who have prayed. Some of us have prayed. Some of us have prayed because they just walked out and prayed. Some of us have prayed Musafir. Just stay where you are. For the others, the females, they can go down and pray at Ras Tenawi. For the males, you can go to the washroom and we can do a quick jama'ah here so that we can save time. I think that's a good idea? Yeah. Yes. 15 minutes. Yeah, for some who have prayed, they can just go and pick some tea and come back. No. So you can pick tea and come back. Let's observe time, and you should not forget the gala dinner. You should not forget the